Hey, fam, and welcome back to the tripod. We're identical triplets and your co hosts, Hope, Heidi, and Heather. This season, we're inviting our siblings into the conversation to hear each of their unique perspectives on what it was really like to grow up in a family of 10 kids. So far, you've heard from the three of us and from our oldest sister, Deb. Today, we're excited to continue the journey by welcoming our oldest brother, Vincent, to the podcast. Welcome, Vincent.
Thank you.
Vincent, or Vin, as we like to call him, is child number 2 born to our parents, Helen and Vincent. And he's older than the three of us by 19 years. Last week, we got some great perspective and insights from our sister, Deb, child number 1 in the family system, on what it was like for her growing up in our family. So we're also really excited to hear from Vin today because despite the fact that we're all siblings, we span a few generations, which, as you can imagine, will add some variety to the conversation today.
I know it's such a trip. And hi, Vin. And thanks so much for joining us today because we're really excited to speak with you because our interview with Deb uncovered some really interesting stories about the family that honestly we had never heard before. So, why don't we start off today with a mini bio? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm 76 years old. I was born in January of 1950 in Boston and spent my early years in Charlestown, where the Bunker Hill Monument and the U.S. Constitution are, and had a great childhood. We moved to Marblehead in 1959, which was a bit of a shock. Leaving Boston, I never really wanted to leave Boston, to be honest with you. Um, Graduated from Marblehead High School in 1967. Then I went to the University of Massachusetts in Boston, and got a bachelor's degree in biochemistry. And after that, I was hired as a biochemistry laboratory instructor at UMass Boston, which I did for 2 years. And then I moved over to Mass General and worked in the cardiology and the thyroid groups doing basic research. Trying to figure out what to do with my life, I decided to get an MBA. I went to Babson College and graduated from Babson in 1983. And then I moved on to the Merck Research Laboratories in Rahway, New Jersey, where I did basic research in diabetes for 5 years before moving over to regulatory affairs, where I had a job as the head of administration for worldwide regulatory affairs, which I didn't like very much. And I left Merck and spent the next 25 years at 2 Japanese companies and also a biotech company, essentially managing the development of monoclonal antibodies for a number of different indications, and had a couple of approvals from the FDA. It was a very interesting career. Working in science is challenging and it's educational because every day is different. I retired in 2021. And then I was working as a consultant for a venture capital company for a few years. I live in Westfield, New Jersey. I'm married to a PhD and a DVM, Peggy, who is a vice president at Merck in regulatory affairs. I have twin daughters, Fiona and Jillian, who are seniors in college. Fiona is at the University of Pittsburgh, and Jillian is at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio.
Awesome.
Can I,
And
can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah.
Vin, so when you were making the decision to get your MBA, did you ever think about getting a PhD in some kind of a science field at that time?
Or an MD?
Yeah.
Well, when I was young, I applied to medical school. I didn't get in, so I didn't pursue it. After I think I applied 2 years Uh, but my academic history was a little spotty. My first couple of years in college, I didn't do all that well because I didn't really feel like I was in the right place.
Mhm.
The war was going on in Vietnam, and I actually at one point thought of joining the Marine Corps.
Wow.
But I told dad that, and he said, "If you die in Vietnam, it will kill your mother." So I
Oh,
decided
wow.
not to enlist.
So that was
But
the number one decision-making factor that dad said that to you?
yes, it was. It wasn't that I was pro-war. It was just that I had a tremendous amount of unsettled feelings about my life and what I was doing, and I thought that I needed a couple of years away to like straighten myself out. I
Mm.
still think that would have been beneficial for me, if I had survived. But it's
Right.
funny, during my time in college, I became very much, against the war, as I am against all wars, particularly the one that's going on right now.
Mhm.
Um, I did one thing I didn't mention is that I did go to graduate school briefly, in 1973. I went to the Hershey Medical Center,
Mm.
to pursue a PhD in biochemistry. I had a very negative experience and decided that being a PhD and writing grants for funding was not something I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I came back to Boston, but then I decided that the biotech industry was starting up, and I thought it would be a good idea to have an MBA and combine that with my scientific background.
Yeah.
That proved to be false because, the biotech companies were not interested in me because I didn't have any experience in the biotech industry, so it's a chicken and egg situation,
Yeah, it's interesting.
and that's why I wound up going to Merck. I tried to get a job in the biotech companies, like Biogen around Boston, but didn't work out, and I had a former colleague who, asked me to join, Merck, and so I went down there. That was interesting, but, the best part of my career in the pharmaceutical industry was in the small companies I worked in because when you're
Less
working
bureaucracy.
when you're working in a big company like Merck, you're, um, you're in a silo, you can only do a certain number of things, you're not allowed to spread your wings. In the small companies, the biotech companies, in particular Relucis, where I developed a monoclonal antibody for anthrax infections,
Wow.
I was the head of regulatory affairs, I was the head of, project management, and, I have had, like, 5 or 6 different hats on, and I loved it. I really did. So it was an interesting time. In retirement, I spend a lot of time looking back over my life and thinking about the mistakes I made, and, probably not getting a PhD was a big mistake. So if I had it to do over again, I would have done it. However, I would have gone into genetics instead of biochemistry because biochemistry is a field that was kind of settled in terms of its knowledge,
Mhm.
whereas genetics constantly changes. And as we see the biotech revolution over the last 30 or 40 years, it's been really quite incredible.
Well, gosh, Vin, thank you so much for, sharing that window into your life with us. A very impressive career path. And, I know I learned some stuff just now. I'm sure Heather and Heidi feel the same about your background as well. So
And
thanks for
and
sharing that. Yeah. I would say too, even though you think about, some stuff you'd like to do over in retirement, hopefully you're thinking about some stuff you did really well too. The good things you did, the right things you did.
Yeah, well, I've never been one to pat myself on the back. I'm kind of self-critical, and I'm inward looking in terms of the things I've done and how I relate to people and how people view me. So there's a lot of self-analysis that goes on all the time.
yeah.
Well, I mean, on that topic, inward looking, can you talk a little bit as you're inward looking? Tell us what some of the best parts of growing up in a big family were for you.
I think that growing up in a big family was very challenging, um, especially in terms of the financial situation. Our father, didn't make a lot of money, so we had to make do with what we had, and I think that that promoted independence, um, and a lack of selfishness, promoted sharing, and the concept that we were all responsible to take care of each other, which I think in our family was one of the very strong things about all of us, especially the older kids taking care of the youngsters. I don't feel like we viewed the young children in our family because if you look at our family in terms of age, there's five older children and five younger children.
Right.
Um, so, I think, when you guys came along in 1969, you know, the oldest four kids were really, pretty much grown up,
Hmm.
in terms of forming personality. But all of us chipped in to help out with Faith and Stephanie and you guys certainly. So those things I think have been a great asset, the qualities that we developed, in terms of how we viewed each other, and the cooperation that is required for 12 people to live in a three-bedroom house, with one bathroom.
Yeah.
Um,
I
as
know it's pretty remarkable.
we had one bathroom until actually it was Mark, Keith, and I who built the second bathroom,
Next to the
after
kitchen, right?
uh,
Off a kitchen.
yeah, that was in 1974. Mark and I had both, were out of college at that time, but, we didn't have the money to do anything. But so we had a little money and, we helped out. Mark, I remember, bought all of the tile and the fixtures and stuff in the bathroom. I did a lot of the carpentry. Ed, of course, our Uncle Ed helped out, and Keith. So, yeah, that was that was a challenge. Um, but I have very fond memories of growing up in that house, especially, when you guys were little, except for the time that you tore up one of my lab reports,
Mhm.
when you were, like, 2 years old, and I didn't have any Scotch tape. I had to take some electrical tape, black electrical tape,
I
and
know.
Tell
and
us tell us that story,
a
Vin. I've never heard that story.
yeah, I was writing a lab report, I think it was in bacteriology.
And by the
Eh
way, was it handwritten or typed?
oh, handwritten, nobody expected you to type anything in college in those days. Of course, it was before computers,
Yeah.
although when I went to graduate school, I had to type every single one of my cases, on a portable typewriter, non-electric, and I'm not a very good typist.
Wow.
But, in college, most everything in college was handwritten. There's some
Mhm.
things, you type, but most of it was handwritten. Um, so I had written this report. It was a bacteriology report, and was sitting on the kitchen table, and I don't know, I went out somewhere, and I came back, and I think you guys were, like, I don't know, you must have been 2 years old. Yeah, you would have been 2 years old. It was all torn into pieces. So, and it was due the next day, and I didn't have any Scotch tape in the house. There was no car available to go to the store. So I took some black electrical tape and taped the report back together again. And then when I handed it in the next day, the instructor said to me, "Oh, this is so interesting."
You didn't say
So
the dog did it, you blamed it on your
no, no,
very cool.
I told her the story, and she was quite forgiving. She was a wonderful teacher, and so I got away with that. But yeah,
Yeah,
That's amazing.
we never got the chance to say we're sorry.
you don't have to say you're sorry.
Yes. All the years later, we're so sorry.
Yeah.
No, but Ben, it's interesting, just listening to you speak, just because our perspective growing up in the family's so different because we were the younger family.
Yeah.
We always just think about what it must have been like for all of you to keep, to continue to have kids added to the list.
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't know what the intention of our parents was in terms of how many kids they wanted.
Yeah.
I think that the first 5 were wanted, well, I shouldn't say wanted, you were all wanted. The first 5 were planned,
Yes.
okay? Uh, and I'm not sure, but I think there might have been another pregnancy that mom had in the early 50s that didn't turn out well.
Mhm.
I'm not sure of that, but that's an impression I had. And then Stephanie came along, and I think she was not planned, and then, of course, Faith and you guys. But, when you already have 5 kids, it's like, okay, there's another kid,
Yeah.
Stevie, then there's Faith, so there's 7 kids. So, I was living, in an apartment on Beacon Hill, uh, in college. I was a sophomore in college. I was sharing an apartment with 2 guys, and then dad called me and he said, "I wanna let you know that your mother had triplets." Um, he thought I was gonna be shocked, but I said, "Well, I'm not really shocked because I had a conversation with her a few weeks ago, and I told her she was gonna have multiple births." And she said, "Yeah, I know." And I said, "At least 2." And she said, "I think it's gonna be 3."
Oh,
And then
wow.
and as you know, the pediatrician or the obstetrician had said you was only gonna be 1 child because your hearts were all beating in sync, and there was no, sonogram in those days. So the only
Right.
way they could tell how many fetuses there were was by putting the stethoscope on the abdomen and seeing if you could distinguish one heartbeat from another.
Wow.
Since your hearts were all beating together, he said, "It's only 1 child." And I said to mom, I said, "You're as big as a house. It's obviously more than 1 child. Anybody with common sense can see that." And she says, "Yeah, I know." So, but that was it. And then, of course, Faith wanted to leave 2 of you in the hospital. You know that story, don't you? She said to mom, "Could we just take one of them home and leave the other 2 here?"
Yeah, poor
Uh,
Faith.
which is so funny. Yeah. Well, we were all very, solicitous, I should say, and sympathetic toward Faith, since she was the apple of everybody's eye,
Yep.
and then all of a sudden gets displaced by these other 3 little things. And I think that was why she I think I think that was why she invented her imaginary friend. She had an imaginary friend who lived in the dining room.
Wasn't it EC and
Easy
Aussie or
Aussie,
There
something?
was
right?
actually 2 of them, yes, EC and
Yeah.
Ossie.
Oh.
And we figured that that was probably a defense mechanism of hers, that she was gonna have these friends who she had and had
Yeah.
nothing to do with you guys.
Mhm.
But I still laugh when I think about that.
Wow. Yeah, I
Great
just like
story.
yeah, I love hearing stories. I mean, I had no idea that you had that conversation with mom about her having more than, 1
Oh,
child.
yeah. Yeah, she was well aware that she was gonna have more than 1 kid, yeah.
Wow.
And then,
Yeah,
of course
I don't think we ever heard that she had vocalized that she was gonna have more than 1 kid. I thought
yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know who else she told, but, I talked to her about it a lot when she was pregnant, and, of course, the doctor who predicted it was only 1 child, didn't charge her for delivering the 3 of you. You know that, don't you?
No.
Oh,
No,
yeah,
that
he
you
said to
didn't
her,
know?
he said, "Since I made a mistake, there's no fee for the delivery."
No
Wow.
way.
Yeah,
That's a
I'm sure
treat.
dad
yeah,
was very happy about that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, mom was kinda funny, though, when she was pregnant, when there's a funny story about when my girlfriend would come to the house, and, mom would be downstairs in the kitchen, and so she would, as soon as Arlie came in the house, mom would run upstairs, but what she would do is she would take a newspaper, and she would hold it in front of her abdomen, so so that she so that Arlie couldn't see how big she was, and she would scuttle up the stairs.
With the open newspaper?
Well,
Like,
she'd take a newspaper, like folded newspaper, but she'd hold it in front of her.
no.
And Arlie and I used to laugh about it all the time. It's like, what? The world doesn't know that you're pregnant? You're going to have
I
Oh,
kids?
was it like a vanity thing? Like she was embarrassed because she was so big?
I don't know what it was. She never wanted people to see her in a house dress, um,
Oh,
or with her hair in curlers. I mean, she came from that generation where,
yeah,
yeah.
you had to present a certain image. I mean,
yeah.
when I was a little kid and they were going into town, they were going downtown. They would always say, "We're going into town," much like people around New York talk about going to Manhattan.
Yep.
They talk about going into town, which meant going into Boston. So, and Dad would always he'd have a sport jacket and a tie and a soft hat. Mom would have a dress on, a hat, jewelry, makeup.
Crazy.
They would never go out in public without showing a certain
That looks
image.
good. Yeah.
And when we were little kids, she did so many things around the house. I mean, besides take care of the kids, cooking, baking, painting, cleaning, washing clothes.
Yeah.
Every day at 4:30, she'd stop and she'd go upstairs and take a bath, do her hair up, put a nice dress on, put makeup on, and then greet Dad at the door when he got home at 5:30. Every single day, I'll never forget that.
We remember.
I
We remember
remember that.
that.
It was just amazing.
Well,
Quite different from today, I'll say, where athleisure rules the day.
It's very different. I mean, I always comment to Peg, like, you go to the store and you see people who are, morbidly obese in tracksuits with their bellies hanging out. I say to her, it's not that I'm condemning those people, but I just say standards have changed so much.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, you would never see anybody dress the way people dress today. When people went on airplanes, everybody got dressed up. You put
mhm.
a suit on or tie, a dress. It was like a big event. It's not like, you go in your pajamas today.
Yeah.
So that's very different. And of course, she was, part of that generation who was very, very concerned about the presentation that she made.
Right, there was just a funny article about people wearing pajamas on planes. I think
Yeah.
s some airline kinda got in trouble for saying no pajamas, and it was just a joke, but it's sort of today's trend. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah. Well, Vin, thanks for sharing all of these stories. Like, I just love listening to them. They seem to fill in some gaps for sure for us, given the age we were when some of these things were happening. But so I know Hope had asked you about some of the like good parts about growing up in the family, and my question is, outside of some of the things that you said were challenging, are there some other things you felt like were challenging just having been number 2 in the line of 10?
I wouldn't say challenging. I would say that I always felt that I had to be a role model.
Which makes
Uh,
sense, right? I mean,
as the oldest
firstborn
son,
firstborn
I
son.
felt like certainly I felt like I had to go to college and that I had to, you know, be a success, not get into trouble. That didn't always work out when there were certain years of my life I was in trouble constantly. But I was always aware that, there were younger children in the family and what I was doing would reflect on them. So I tried to do my best to set a good example, to be a good person.
So you talking about, like, just expectations you felt like were
Expectations
missing?
because I think, older children in a family set an example for younger children.
Yeah.
So if you're not, you know, if you're a bad actor, I think that that can easily affect the younger kids. And I think all of us, I think, I haven't spoken to Deb or Mark or Keith about this or Pam, but I think they would probably say the same thing that they felt the same kind of I wouldn't say pressure, but an awareness that it was important to do the right thing and to be a success.
Yeah, like
And I think history or experience has borne out that in a family of 10 kids, all of us have been successful to one extent or another. Some more than others. And I think we've all lived good and decent lives with good values. And I think a lot of that comes from the upbringing that we had, both from our parents and our interactions together.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, that's actually a great segue into the next question because, we were gonna ask you about sort of what was your perception of yourself within the family? And sort of what role do you think you played? And you said you feel like, your role was sort of one of being a role model. Um,
Yeah.
is there any other sort of role that you thought you played in the family?
Uh, not nothing that comes to mind in particular, really. Um, Other than the fact that when things had to get fixed around the house, I was usually the person who had to do that. Uh, because
With
our father was all thumbs. He never really did anything, and
Mm.
he was afraid of heights, for instance, and so I had to paint the house when I was 13 years old. So if you remember our house, it had a peak up
Yeah.
at the top, so I had to get up on a ladder and go up and paint the house. So I had an expectation that I had to do all those things because I knew that he wasn't going to do them.
Are those
Um,
types of things that you liked and came naturally, or are those things that you didn't necessarily like, but you felt like you had to do?
some things I like to do, other things I didn't necessarily want to get on a ladder. I still get up on the roof and clean out the gutters of my house, but doesn't mean I'm not afraid of heights, which I am. But you do what you have to do. So in that case, like I said, my father liked to sit in a chair and smoke cigarettes and read books. That was his thing. I'm sure you remember that.
Yep.
And I was more concerned with how the house looked and fixing the house up and keeping it nice. So I spent a lot of time doing stuff like that. Um, so yeah, I thought that was my expectation. When something needed to be done, mom would ask me, "Can you do this? Can you do that?" Like she used to ask me, "Can you take Deborah to the dentist?" when I was 7 years old. You know those stories, don't you?
No, share
That's
them because
awesome.
that's so fascinating.
Deborah to the dentist
Well,
at 7
my mother, you have to remember that our mother didn't have a license.
Right, she never drove.
There was one car in the family, and that was with my father when he would drive off to work. So when my mother needed an errand done, she would ask me to do it. So in those days, there were no suburban malls. There were four big department stores in downtown Boston, and that's where everybody shopped. And so when they went into town, they went to those stores. Filene's, Jordan Marsh. I forget the names of the other two, but they were all big department stores. So, for instance, my mother would buy a dress, and then she'd get it home, and she would decide she didn't like it. And she'd say, "Vin, can you take this back and return it and get a credit for me?" I was like 7 years old.
I mean,
So
that's so hard. Like, did you get on a train or
I
a
would go
bus
on, I
or
would get on a, I would get on a bus at the end of Mystic Street. I would go into Boston to where Government Center is now. It used to be called Scully Square.
Mm.
And you get a pink transfer from the bus, a free transfer to the subway. So I would take that and go down into the subway. And then I think I'd go two stops to Park Street, and then get out and walk down to the store and go
Downtown
in and
Crossing?
return it and go home. So she asked me to do that several times. And then the other story is Deborah was getting fitted for braces at Harvard Dental School, which is all the way on the other side of Boston. And so she said, "Will you chaperone Deborah over to the dental school?" So I had to get on the subway. This is different because there was like two different subway lines, and take her over there, which I did. But it's funny because
Do you ever
later on,
talk to Deb about that, Vin?
oh yeah, Deb knows about that. So, but later on in life, when sitting around the house talking to mom, and I'd bring up these stories, and she would say to me, she'd say, "What was I thinking? I must have been crazy." And I said, "No, it was a different world. You didn't have to worry about your kids being kidnapped." And,
Yeah.
so, I mean, when I was a little kid in elementary school, we used to go in to see the Red Sox in the afternoon. I was in like third grade. We get out of school at 2:30 in the afternoon, and there was a bus stop right in front of the school, St. Francis de Sales. We get on the bus, and it
Charlestown,
was
that's where it was in
It
Charlestown?
w yeah, the church is still there. If you look at Charleston, when you go over the bridge, you see the church on the top of the hill
Yeah.
with the green carp. That was our church, St. Francis de Sales. And the school was right across the street. Now it's a condo building because there's no more elementary school there, parochial school. But for 5 cents, we get on the bus, again, go into the city, jump onto the subway, go to Fenway Park. And the Red Sox played mostly day games in those days, not night games. So we would get to Fenway at the bottom of the seventh inning, and there would be hundreds of kids from all over the city outside Fenway Park. And the ushers would let us all in because the Red Sox were very bad, and there were only a couple thousand people in the ballpark, so they let us in for free.
Wow.
So we'd go in and get two or three innings of baseball, and then go home. So the whole trip cost us a dime, 5 cents in and 5 cents home.
Wow.
I like to tell people that story. I was sitting in Yankee Stadium a few years ago with some corporate tickets, and there were seats right behind home plate, and the tickets cost $1,500 a
I
piece.
know. Mm-hmm.
And I told the people I was with my story about seeing the Red Sox for a nickel. And I said, times have certainly changed, haven't they?
Yeah, I know. Ticket prices are so absurd for
Uh,
games and for
For anything.
yeah.
crazy.
But yeah, but mom, like I said, mom relied on me a lot to do things because she once said to me that I was not born a child. She said I was born as a little adult.
Yeah, these days it would be called parentification, but that's okay.
Child abuse today.
Well, it would be neglect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Vin, I just want to ask one question because it's an observation I've picked up with you and with Deb. You guys had pretty colorful lives in Charlestown as kids, and that move to Marblehead was probably a real shock for you, given the accessibility to sort of downtown Boston from Charlestown. And Deb had made a comment when she spoke with us about how difficult it was for her to leave Charlestown to come to Marblehead.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, just really pretty interesting. It was
do
culture
you feel the same, Ben?
I felt the same way. I felt like Marblehead was alien territory. Again, as I said, when we were kids, we roamed all over the city. We used to go over to the Museum of Science. We'd go to car shows in the city. Young boys in the 50s were fascinated by cars. And every time a car show came out, all the new car models, we'd run in there to see them. But you also have to remember that growing up Catholic, Charlestown was completely Catholic.
Mm.
When somebody asked you where you lived, you didn't say, I live at 10 Mystic Street. You'd say, I live in St. Francis Parish, or I live in St. Catherine's Parish, or I live in St. Mary's Parish. So those were the three Catholic churches in a part of Boston that's only about 1 square mile.
Wow.
Can
Wow.
you, you
Wow.
know, and they were all, every Sunday, those churches were packed. And then we moved to Marblehead, and our neighbors didn't talk to us for several years because they were all Protestants and they didn't like a Catholic family, particularly the Hogan family down the street. They were very hostile toward us. And my classmates at the Gary School used to call me Vinny the Guinea
Yeah.
because
Born Italian.
because to them, anybody with the name Vincent was Italian. So, I mean, they were kind of ignorant people, so it was just very strange. And of course, they had a lot more money than we had. So yeah, that was a real shock.
What do you think
I never wanted to leave. And the other thing about staying in Charlestown is that I was very close to our grandmother.
who lived in
I,
the home with you, right?
who It was her house that we lived in, Peg Brickley, and I think it's true that I was probably her favorite child.
Mm.
Wait,
And
did you just say Peg?
Peg, her name was Marguerite, but
Right.
she was known as Peg,
Okay,
Peg
I didn't
Brickley.
know that,
I
but
didn't know that either.
Yeah, Peg
it's good to
Brickley.
know because my
And you
daughter is
married
Marguerite,
Peg.
call her Peg.
Yeah, and so and then after we moved, I used to come and stay with her in the summer for 2 or 3 days and do things around her house, fix stuff around her house. And I remember when I would go home, and Dad would come and pick me up. She would cry and she would ask me to stay longer because she was so lonely.
Mm.
Why did mom and dad decide to leave then in your mind?
Well, Their move out of the city was part of what the white middle class did in the late 50s and early 60s. I think a part of it was a feeling that, well, I shouldn't really say it, but I wouldn't call it racism, but, the white people fled the cities.
Mm.
When they built the interstate highway system, it made it easy for people to leave, and they did. And like, the other thing is that they wanted houses with some land around them and stuff. Now, in our particular case, the house we had in Charlestown, or my grandmother's house, it wasn't really bigger than the house we had in Marblehead. It was laid out differently. Um, and mom hated living there. I remember her telling me all the time she couldn't wait to get out. Uh, Whether or not she wanted to move to Marblehead, I don't know. I remember going with them and looking at different houses before they bought the house in Marblehead. There was one house in particular in Concord or Lexington, I think it was, and it was a great house, and it was selling for a very low price. But as it turns out, the family that lived there had been murdered,
Hmm.
and nobody wanted to buy the house.
I remember
So
that story. Yeah.
yeah, so we didn't buy the house. Now, so the house in Marblehead, we bought that house because our Uncle Ed was part of the deal. The house next door was bought as a parcel, two houses.
The Melanson's house, right?
Yeah, the house that Ray Friedel lived in. And so our house, the cost was $22,500. Our house was $15,000, and the house next door was $7,500. So they bought them together. You had to buy both of them. And the people who lived there were the Lawlers, who then moved across the street to live in the White House on the corner. I don't know if you remember Gertrude Lawler. Do you
The
remember
name
you remember the Murphys? Remember the Murphys who lived there? The
No,
old Irish guy.
I
no.
remember these names, but not the people.
Well, the house on the house. You remember the Milligans? The park, the park, the house right next to the park.
Next to Fountain Park?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yes.
on the right hand side, that was the Milligans,
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
and the house across the street
Was the Lawlers.
was the Lawlers and the Murphys.
Okay.
Um, uh, Gertrude Lawler was medical secretary to Dr. Hopkins.
Okay.
You remember Dr. Hopkins?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. So the Lawlers lived in that house, and then after Ed bought it, he renovated it and they moved. So, and then he rented it out, and then Ray Friedel came along a couple years later and bought it. So that's how we got close to Ray, because he was living in that house,
I didn't know that.
and I
That's
went to work for him as a teenager. He was a great guy, taught me a lot.
Yeah, I know you were very close to Ray.
Yeah,
Well, Vin, this has been super, I guess, very educational. I'm learning a lot. Uh, so I know you talked about, the day that we were born when Dad called you and said
yeah.
Mom had triplets. Can you talk a little bit about how the family system changed, if at all, when we came onto the scene?
Well, I don't know that the family system changed because, as I said, we came from a family where the older kids helped the younger kids,
Hmm.
and there was now three more kids to help out. Um, Mom, of course, was under a lot of pressure. Many times, I'd come into the house and I'd find her crying um,
Because she was so overwhelmed, you mean?
because she was so overwhelmed.
Mhm.
I remember one day in particular, the day that you guys got into the food cupboard in the kitchen. Do you know that story?
The
I think
cereal.
I've seen pictures. I
You
don't
took,
remember.
you put, the three of you got into inside the cabinets underneath the sink, and you took a bottle of molasses and you poured it all over yourselves, and then you took Rice Krispies and you put the Rice Krispies on. So you had Rice Krispies and molasses, and you were in diapers, of
Oh
course.
no.
It was the middle of the summer, and Mom was crying, and she just pointed. She couldn't even talk. She pointed. So I took each one of you outside, and there was a hose out in the back, and I put a hose on each one of you and washed you all off and changed your diaper.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So,
What a
yeah.
mess. I
So the dynamic, no, I think the dynamic changed in certain, it's affected people, some people more. Stephanie, I think, got affected a lot because,
mm,
and you remember this, when you were little kids, she took care of you a lot.
she did. We were with her and her friends all the time.
You know, I can remember I'd be driving around town and I'd see Stevie and the three of you walking all over town.
Yeah.
So, there was a lot of responsibility put on her
Yeah.
at an early age. She was 10 years old,
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
so, but other than that, no, there wasn't really a big difference. Like I said, it was just a couple more kids. And if it had only been two kids and then triplets arrived, it would have been a huge disruption. But when you've already got seven kids,
Yeah.
you add another three,
Like,
it doesn't
What's the
really
difference,
change that
right?
much. Yeah.
The more the merrier. The more the
Yeah. I
or
think that
the
was
more
the
the
way.
greater the overwhelm.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like it was, oh, we're happy that these three kids are here, but it was like we were, you know, pleasantly surprised, I guess. And as it turns out, you were, of course, you were the apples of mom's eye, the three of you, and Faith. I think she felt a special kinship to the younger kids more than the older kids, because we were, in, especially in the 1950s, we were kind of independent. We were on our own. It was like, we left the house when the sun came up and we came home when the streetlights came on. They had no idea where we were.
Mhm.
None,
We feel that way too, though.
I
We do, like,
totally feel that way.
yeah.
Yes.
you know? Um,
Maybe that's just a bandwidth thing. They just didn't have time. Like,
I
they
think.
just couldn't focus.
I think, well, you know what? Yeah, I mean, that wasn't unusual for the time. Most kids in the 50s growing up were like, they were on their own, really,
Definitely.
because there were a lot of kids in the family. All the families had a lot of people. I mean, in Charlestown, they used to say if a woman had less than five kids, she must be on birth control.
Oh my god, that's crazy.
Well,
You
plus
know?
plus it goes back to what you were saying about it being predominantly Catholic too, right? Like,
Yes,
I mean,
very much so, very much
that's
so,
a
and Irish Catholic
Irish
in
Catholic.
particular.
Well,
Yeah.
an Irish Catholic with birth control being the rhythm method, right?
Yes,
I
Yes,
mean,
yes,
exactly.
yeah.
yes. We called it Roman roulette.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of question roulette. That's good. I've never heard that
Me
before.
either, I love
You
that.
never heard that term,
No,
Roman roulette?
it's
Yeah,
a
No.
good term.
Catholic birth control. Yep.
Um, well, thanks for, what you shared. I am gonna shift the tone of this conversation just a little bit and ask you more particularly about what it was like for you, um, when a- after losing, both dad and mom, how things changed for you.
Well, um, I wouldn't say changed. I mean, I had a difficult relationship with our father as a kid, um, probably because he wasn't involved in my life and he never really talked to me about the future or what he expected of me. He never kissed me or hugged me, and that's true of mom too. I never had any physical contact with either one of them.
Do you think that was a
Uh,
sign of the times though, Van? I mean, do you think that was
no,
no?
no.
Okay.
I think that was something with him because we couldn't call him dad or daddy either. We had to refer to him as father. I don't know what
Wow.
you didn't know that?
No, you
Yeah.
guys were told to call him father?
Yes, he would say, I would call and say dad. He'd say, my name is father. You address me as father. Um,
Wow.
so we didn't have the best of relationships. And when he died,
Did
I
that
was
change at all, Van? Like, was it a contentious relationship from the time you were little to the time,
thanks.
you know
It changed. After when I was a child, it was bad because I remember overhearing a conversation when I was a little kid between him and mom, and he said she was asking him to be more involved in my life. And he said to her, I don't think he likes me, meaning I don't like him.
Hmm.
I was only about 5 years old when I heard that. I was in the hallway up on the third floor of the house in Charlestown. He was talking to her in the bedroom. Um, but he never said let's go outside and play catch, or, um, he never read a book to us, or he had all these civic activities. He often said he belonged to 72 civic organizations, most importantly, the American Legion.
Yeah, we were.
And he spent so much time devoted to those organizations. He didn't have any time for us. That's why, for instance, Mark and Keith and I were so close to Ed, because Ed was the kind of guy who would say, "Hey, let's get a football and go throw the football around," or "Let's go take a ride to New Hampshire," or "Let's do this or that." Dad never did those things. Um,
Do you think Dad thought Ed was fulfilling that part of, like, that
The role.
fatherly-ish role for you?
I don't know what he thought. I don't think he really cared, to be honest with you. But we were getting closer in my 20s. We were getting closer. And then I had hopes that that would continue, that path would continue, we'd get closer. And then he died so suddenly.
Mhm.
Um,
How old were you then?
so I was 30, right? What year did he die?
82.
82. I was 32.
Okay.
I was in business school, actually. Yeah, so obviously that was a huge shock and a huge change in our family. And then with Mom, um, I had the same kind of feelings. When I moved from Marblehead, I think she was disappointed in me that I moved away. She felt that I was abandoning her. And I moved to New Jersey, not because I wanted to leave Massachusetts, but because I needed to find a job.
Mm-hmm.
So I really had no choice. So our relationship changed a lot after I moved. Um, we weren't as close as we used to be. So, um, you know, when she died, I mean, especially the way she died, it was terrible, the suffering that she went through.
Mm-hmm.
I always think about that. Um, like anybody else, you don't anticipate your parents are going to die so young.
Mm-hmm.
You see a future ahead where maybe you have kids and they have grandchildren,
Right.
because I think most people would like to see that. So that was obviously something I couldn't do. Um, but but then again, I look back and I also think, like Dad, and for instance, smoked all his life. You know, he didn't exercise. He didn't have a really healthy diet.
Mm-hmm.
But I also feel bad because, as somebody who was a scientist, I recognized in him signs that he was having cardiac issues. And it's funny, I was working in the cardiology department at Mass General,
Huh.
and I wanted to bring him in and have an appointment done, but he poo-pooed that.
Mm.
He wouldn't go in and see the doctor.
I
I
think Dad
remember,
didn't listen to a lot of people who may have thought something was wrong.
yeah, I mean, I remember one day I was in Boston with him. I had to meet him at the Historical and Genealogical Society for something. I was in my early 20s, and he had to stop. He couldn't catch his breath walking down the street.
Mm.
And that was a signal to me that something was wrong. Either he had stenosis or some other cardiac failure issue. But again, he was like, "I'll be okay." And then he'd go home and have another cigarette.
How far or how long before he died do you remember that happening?
That was like a year or so.
That was a full year. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah,
Well,
I wish that I often say to people, the worst mistake I ever made was picking up the first cigarette. In our family, when you guys were little, everybody in the family smoked.
yeah,
Mom smoked, Dad smoked, all of us smoked. And sometimes you'd be in the house and you could like see the cigarette smoke in the house. It was so thick.
I remember, like, going through pocketbooks and taking cigarettes and throwing them in the toilet.
definitely. Well,
I remember you guys came home from school and you hid all the ashtrays in the house
yeah,
because you had had a smoking education class.
yeah,
Yeah.
And I think I was pissed off because I was looking for an ashtray.
Probably.
And I
We're
found
very
out
concerned about all of you. We're
that
trying
you guys had,
to be very healthy.
yeah,
But it's interesting though, because I mean, obviously the three of us never smoked, and we did grow up in it's like a house filled with secondhand smoke.
right,
Even in high school, I would go to Matt's house like after a holiday.
yeah,
Everybody would be like, "Have you been smoking?"
yeah,
Because
because you had the
no one in
smoke
his
all over
family
you.
smoked, and I smelled like smoke, and I didn't even realize it.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah,
I
yeah,
remember I remember having, like, an asthma attack, and dad walked me down. Was it Doctor Hopkins that lived right at the
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
yeah.
So they used to shoot you with, like, adrenaline. I think it was an adrenaline
yeah,
shot,
epinephrine, that's right.
epinephrine, and so I came back after getting my epinephrine shot back into the house, and everybody was sitting down in the den smoking cigarettes,
Oh, yeah.
and I'm like, "Your asthma attack." I'm just like,
Well,
"This is so odd."
you
Like,
you probably you probably don't
I
know
can't
this,
breathe
but
and people are smoking.
I I was a severe asthmatic as a child. I had asthma worse than any of the other kids in the family. In fact, I almost died twice.
Wow.
Uh,
I didn't know
oh, yeah.
as a
Once
kid, right?
as a child, the worst one was, the ambulance had to come to the high school and take me out because I was cyanotic, I had turned blue.
Wow.
Yeah, and they had to, give me, oxygen and adrenaline in the ambulance. But, when I was a little kid, mom, dad, and Ed would be standing around talking about my asthma, smoking. And the other thing, Doctor Hopkins, I had an asthma attack once, and I had to go down to his office also to get an epinephrine shot. He was smoking a cigarette as he gave me the shot.
No way.
Honest to God, I'm not kidding you.
Gosh.
He's treating an asthmatic child, and he's smoking a cigarette, giving me the shot of
In
adrenaline
his office. That is
in his office.
incredible.
Yep, yep,
Yeah,
yeah,
it was
Stan
so
Hopkins.
that's the thing so
I
crazy. It was so normative, I just
how times have changed, right? No. I
changed.
know.
Well, when we were little kids, nobody would lock their car. The cars were all open,
Or their
and every
houses. No one locked their houses.
and the percentage of people who smoked was probably 3/4 of the population. We used to go in and the cars were all open. We just put our hand in and take the cigarettes off the dashboard. Yeah,
Right.
and the other thing,
Budgeting.
Ed, for instance, I was Ed's little helper. So I'd go with him and to do whatever job around whatever house he was working on. And then after I got done, he'd say, "Here, have a cigarette. This is your reward." So
Wow.
he'd give me one of his English Oval cigarettes,
I remember
which was
those.
this black Turkish tobacco, unfiltered, terrible. And he'd say, "Don't tell your mother I gave you the cigarette." And I was proud. I could smoke. I was 10 years old. I'll smoke a cigarette.
Oh, that's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously we all know how addictive cigarettes and
Oh,
nicotine
horrible,
are.
horrible. One of the worst
Right.
things that ever happened to our society was people
Tobacco
smoking
industry.
cigarettes.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing is, talking about generations, the older people, like my grandmother's generation, not many of them smoked. It was the World War II
That
generation,
smoked.
the greatest generation. They were the big smokers.
Yeah.
Okay. All of them smoked.
But didn't all the guys in the military get cigarettes sent to them?
Free,
It was free.
free.
Military provided cigarettes.
Everybody in the military, they used to get 10 packs of cigarettes a week.
Yep.
I mean, think about that. That's really crazy.
Yeah. Don't say
Good
that tobacco
good
companies
genetics.
stress disorder is real and, there's cigarettes to
I
psycho
know.
It's funny you bring it up because we were watching the Duke basketball game the other day, and I was talking to Jillian, and I said, "You know the history of Duke University?
Uh-oh.
You know the history of Duke University, don't you?"
Was tobacco
Tobacco.
Yeah.
Mr. Duke made his money because he invented the first really good automatic cigarette rolling machine.
Mm.
And from that, he built the American Tobacco Company.
Right.
And that money was used to finance Duke University. That's why, I don't know if it's still there, but the statue of him at the university, he has a big cigar in his hand.
Yeah.
You know that statue?
I'm sure I've seen it. Hope you've probably seen
Yeah,
it too.
I'm
Haven't
yeah,
I have seen it. I'm
You
sure
said
but I probably never kind of made the connection.
yeah, yeah. Tobacco, terrible.
I
terrible.
just Shashevskyville and sat on the
And that was one of the worst things about living in that house. Um, Not in rec I wouldn't say at the time I felt that, but in looking back on it, I see how terrible it was and
Mhm.
how healthy it was, especially the effect on kids like you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
You
know.
know, thank
Well,
thank
I mean, how old were all of you guys when you stopped smoking cigarettes? Because no one
when I stopped smoking,
yeah.
I think Deb was probably the first person to stop, maybe in her 20s. Mark stopped maybe in his late 20s. I
Mhm.
stopped when I was about 42. Keith continued smoking up until I think his 60s. Pam smoked maybe up until she was 50 or so,
Yeah.
but she didn't smoke much, just an occasional cigarette.
Yep.
But I always knew how bad they were. Believe me, I knew.
And
The
Steph
first time the first time you pick up a cigarette and you get lightheaded and you feel sick, you know that's poison.
Mm.
and
But
Steph
it's
never really smoked, right?
no, Stephanie never really smoked.
Yeah. She didn't really I don't think she had, like, a habit. I mean, I remember her smoking, you know,
I didn't mean to get off on
throughout
that subject, but
No,
it was something that was ever present in that house, cigarettes.
yeah, and yeah, I we definitely I remember it for sure. So thanks, Vin, so much for sharing all that you just shared. We really appreciate it, and I guess I'm just going to move on a little bit to just say, if you think about our family, what is it? Do you think that our family of 10 really taught you intentionally or unintentionally about how the world works?
Well, I don't think it was intentional, but I think, as I said earlier, growing up in a small house with a lot of people, you have to learn to share things.
Mhm.
You have to learn not to be selfish. You have to learn to help people when they need help. When somebody says, I need a ride here or there, or I need 10 bucks, um,
Or 50
you
cents
know,
for a cup of coffee,
to go to a reggae concert. Like I remember Hope asked me once for 10 or 20 bucks to go to a reggae concert. Um,
and you
y-
obliged. Thank you.
or yeah, or when I asked Heidi to make me a cup of tea when she was a little kid and
Yep.
bring it down to when I was doing woodworking. Um, the interactions that we all had teach you that it's important to treat people fairly and well, not to be mean or cruel.
Mm.
And I think the fact that all of us are still pretty close uh, is a testament to that. But when you look at the world today, it's completely different because you live in a world that's narcissistic and materialistic, uh,
Thank you,
One
social
and
media.
and and what amazes me so much is how people hate each other so much because of their political views.
Yeah, I know.
You
Divisive.
know, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, we've talked about that. There used to be tolerance between people, right? You could have a conversation growing up, and if you had a disagreement politically, you sort of, disagreed and moved on and
Yeah,
sort of really by
and
but
not only that, but I mean, when I was a kid, there really wasn't a lot of difference between the Democratic and the Republican Party. They both stood for pretty much the same thing. The Democrats stood a little bit more for things like workers' rights, and the Republicans were more about the rights of people who had money, like the Wall Street people. But there wasn't such a huge divide. And the other thing, too, is that when I was young, before the suburbs were built, and again, before the interstate highway system came about, everybody lived together.
Mhm. Communal.
It was a mix. Neighborhoods in the city had rich people, poor people, middle class people, white people, black people, Asian people, all your neighbors.
Different
Okay.
religions, everything, right?
Then the suburbs come about,
So
and what happens? Everybody went off to
separate.
join their tribe, right?
Mhm.
Like this town here. Okay, it's all upper middle class, almost predominantly white.
mm,
Okay, in New Jersey, and the same in Massachusetts, when you tell somebody what town you're from, they know how much money you make
mhm.
Yeah, they
for the most part, right?
Yeah.
And that's probably true all around the country, except for the rural part of the country.
Mm.
Um, so, yeah, it was the huge differences, just have been growing and growing and growing. A lot of it artificial, There's no reason for a lot of it, except that I think the media pushes it and they make money off of it, like Fox News, for instance. Um, so yeah, very strange to me.
Well, Vin,
So the world today, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, it's very different from the kind of inner world that we had, you know?
yeah, no, absolutely. And I just want to say this has been such a great, hour with you. I'm speaking on behalf of Heather and Heidi. We thank you so much for, making the time to join us on the podcast. And before we wrap up here, Vin, are there any additional insights about your life or about growing up in a family of 10 kids that we haven't asked you that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Nothing comes to mind. Um, we're going back earlier to, the comments about, marriage and how marriage and families are negatively viewed today in our society
Mhm.
and increasingly amongst young people.
Yeah.
And, I'm an avid reader of the New York Times. Since I'm retired, I have nothing else to do except cut the grass,
Haha.
cook supper, go shopping. Um, but,
Domesticated.
Well, you've always
but,
made me read it.
I love to read the comments to all of the articles in the New York Times because it gives you an insight as to how people think and how other people think about things.
Okay, so you're reading it online then, right?
Yeah, online. And so, on my little, iPad, which I carry around with me. So, when I read comments about people make negative comments about children and families and all the rest of it, and I think to myself, what is life about if it's not about your family and your children? If you're going to exist by yourself and never procreate or never live in a family, it's like, what kind of world is that? And you see people today with all kinds of loneliness issues,
Oh,
Oh my
absolutely.
gosh, yeah,
terrible, psychological problems,
absolutely.
because they can't connect to other people.
Yep.
I think one of the greatest blessings I have is I still, have a family that I can talk to, that I can write to, that I can speak to for the most part. There's one exception, but, that makes me very happy and it enriches my life.
Mhm.
And I'm sure it enriches your life too.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll always, with the work that I do,
Yeah.
I mean, people were made for relationship. And so when they're not connected in
Yeah.
relationship, they don't feel like they have belonging purpose.
Yeah.
Feel me.
And you guys in particular as triplets, I think are particularly lucky. Because I remember when you were little kids, um, you always could tell me that you knew what the
You're
other
sending
people were
hearts.
thinking. Like you'd say, I'd look at you and you'd like be having conversations just by looking at each other. And I could tell what was going on. You weren't saying anything, but it was like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely.
We're
Yeah.
Yeah.
telepathic. We're telepathic. Triplet talk.
Cut.
Well, it's true, like what you said about only hearing one heartbeat, the fact that our heartbeats were
Align.
synchronized. I mean, that's pretty fascinating to think about, just that rhythm together. So,
Have you revealed that before on your podcast
um,
that you only had one heartbeat?
I
I
think
think
I
so.
think you said that. I think that's what we heard from you and everybody else in the family. But
Yeah.
when you really think about that, when you think about the conversation that you had with mom and maybe mom had with other people, knowing that, she was carrying 3 babies, so she was larger, you
Mm.
guys sort of all thought it was gonna be more than 1, but that the doctors didn't pick up, even with the stethoscope, that
Yeah.
it was more than 1, I think is just really fascinating.
Yeah. Well, a stethoscope is a very crude instrument, so it didn't surprise me.
Yeah.
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 Well, it's always so funny too when, people will ask if mom was on fertility drugs because we're
After having
born
7
in
kids?
1969 and we were
Yeah, right.
9 and 10. Yeah, no.
Yeah, like she needed them, right?
Yes. We
Exactly.
definitely did not need them.
Well, Ben, if you don't have any other comments, I just wanna say from the 3 of us again, I know we thank you for, we've thank you for thank you for the questions that you've answered. But just wanna say again, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be with us, to join us.
So
And
insightful.
thank you. Yeah.
You're perfectly welcome. Nice to talk to you, girls.
It was awesome. And so, well, all right, fam. Hopefully you've gained some insights into Vin's experiences growing up in our family. And so next up, you're going to hear from our brother Mark, who was born 1 year after Vin and is the
Well,
third born child in our family.
I'm
And
sure that
now,
will be very interesting.
yes, we are expecting that it will be. But for now, thanks for listening to The Tripod. Remember, you can find us at The Tripod on all podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. So please hit subscribe to follow us, like us, and help us spread the word.
Okay.
See you
Peace,
soon.
girls.
See you
Thanks,
soon.
Ben. Love
Bye.
ya. Bye.
Love you too.
Love
Love you.
Take care.